Prabhu sir, are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Right now I can able to hear.
Okay, all right. So I think some of the participants have joined in. The volunteers, can you please check uh, how many of the participants are already here? I can just see a couple of them. All right, we will start with the session with the participants who are already here. So good afternoon to all. Welcome to the fourth technical session of the Virtual National Conference on Interdisciplinary Perspectives on Women Migrant Workers and Law in India. This technical session deals with papers pertaining to impact of COVID-19 on women migrant workers and legal measures. We have with us Dr. Ranita Nagar, Professor of Economics at Gujarat National Law University, as the chairperson for the session. We also have with us Mr. Mahendra Prabhu, Assistant Professor of Law at TNNLU, as the co-chair for the session. I take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Prabhu, the chair, as well as to the presenters and participants in the session. Mr. Prabhu is currently working as an assistant professor of law at the Tamil Nadu National Law University, Trichy, and is the member of Center for Postgraduate Legal Studies at TNNLU. He has been working in this institution since August 2015, and prior to that, Mr. Prabhu was project associate at MHRD IPR chair, IIT Madras. He also has a brief litigation experience. Mr. Prabhu is currently pursuing his PhD in law from the Tamil Nadu Dr. Ambedkar Law University, Chennai. He has an excellent academic record, being the gold medalist in his ML. Mr. Prabhu specializes in intellectual property rights, but also takes interest in human rights issues. He was the member Board of Studies, CBE Bharatidasan University, Trichy, in the year 2018, and External Export Trademarks Committee, IIM Trichy, in 2016. He has participated in various conferences for presenting his research papers, as well as the chairperson, as well as he has participated as a chairperson and resource person for various conferences and seminars. Mr. Prabhu is a well-accomplished academician, and we are glad to have him with us as a co-chair. I would now request Mr. Prabhu to kindly introduce our chairperson for the session, Dr. Ranita Nagar.
Thank you, Mrunmoy, madam. I take this privilege to introduce the chairperson for the session, Professor Dr. Ranita Nagar. Madam is a professor of economics at Gujarat National Law University, Gandhinagar, India. And Madam holds a PhD degree in the subject economics, and her area of research interest are political economy, institutional economics, development economics, and law and economics. And at present, ma'am holds the position of head of GNLU Center for Law and Economics and was the former dean research at GNLU Gandhinagar. Madam had over 17 years of teaching and research experiences and had edited several books, including Sustainable Development in India, Convergence of Law, Economics, Science, and Politics, that is published by Oxford University Press, as well as The Law and Economics in India, Understanding and Practice, published by Taylor and Francis, and many more. And she has also articles in the peer-reviewed journals. In addition to the publication, Professor has introduced courses on law and economics at the university, and Madam Professor has attended the Co-Sanders Summer School in Law and Economics at University of Chicago, and Professor is also the founding member of the Indian Association of Law and Economics, under which 6 international conferences on law and economics has been organized. And Madam Professor is the editor-in-chief of the UGC CARE listed GNLU Journal on Law and Economics. I welcome you, Madam, to TNLU and that too for our virtual conference here. And with this, I think that we can move on with the session to proceed further. Back to you, Mrunmoy.
Thank you, sir. So before we begin with the session, I would just like to mention a few rules for the participants. Please ensure that you keep your mics muted throughout the session unless you are presenting or asking the question at the end of the presentation with the permission of the chair and the co-chair. Please do not interrupt a speaker in between while they are speaking. And for the speakers, each speaker will get 10 minutes each to make the presentation. The chair and the co-chair can give their comments and ask their questions in addition to that. In case of 2 speakers presenting a paper, both shall share the time allotted. That is, the 10 minutes have to be divided between them. Kindly adhere to the time limit so that we can conclude all the presentation on time. So with that, with the permission of the chair and the co-chair, shall we start with the session?
Yes, please go ahead, and best wishes to all present.
Please go.
All right. Okay, so the first presenter was supposed to be Elizabeth KJ. Has she joined in? Probably not. So the next speaker is Bharti Bareja, who would be presenting a paper on COVID-19, a nodus in women's life. She is from Geeta Institute of Law.
Good afternoon to the respected jury and one and all present here. My name is Bharti and I am from Geeta Institute of Law, and my topic of the paper is COVID-19 in nodus in women's life. So this topic is particularly about the problems or complications faced by the migrant women workers during the COVID-19 lockdown. The outraging impact of it women cannot be ignored. It has left many of them homeless, dejected, and on the verge of mere survivorship. So this paper presentation scouts the effect of pandemic on women migrant workers and their livelihood. So it indicates the plight of itinerant women job holders and urges for looking into the impecuniosity they are struggling. So according to a study conducted by the international team of the World Health Organization, a severe acute respiratory syndrome named coronavirus disease originated in the city of Wuhan in China and soon declared as a pandemic by the WHO. And it has impacted every region, state, class of the entire world. The whole world was a complete lockdown, and the same was with India. So, in lockdown was imposed in a phased manner to avoid the spread of the disease, and everyone was impacted. But the most impacted.
Bharti, just a second. Please let me intervene. Participants, we would not ask you to, really read through your papers. No, please don't do that. What we ask of you is very clearly tell us what is the objective of the study, right? What is the methodology that you've used, right? What are your research questions specifically, and what are your outcomes?
Okay, ma'am.
Because see, we need to train you for towards doing research and towards thinking in a very scientific manner about research, right?
Okay.
So there's a lot of interesting content, but you need to organize that in terms of a research paper. Right? What you need to do is not read through the content, but conceptualize what are your research questions, what is the method of the research, what are the outcomes. Okay,
Okay, ma'am.
please continue.
The research objective of this study is the plight of women migrant workers and impact of it on their health, both physical as well as mental. So this is a qualitative research, and it was done near the textile mill of Panipat. As most of the migrant workers are mainly from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Madhya Pradesh, because there are no employment opportunities available, the cities are underdeveloped, and they are living in poverty. So this particular study is all about how they have been impacted by it, what is the impact of it on migrant workers as they have to travel from one state to another, because they have no means of survivorship in the states in which they are working, and they don't have any savings as particular. But still, this study is going to focus on the migrant workers who decided to stay in the town Panipat for uh, further moving on to their jobs. So the result of these studies are that the women migrant workers
Bharti,
are
just
the
a
ones.
second. Do you have any literature review? Do you want to talk about some literature review?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, should I continue?
Yes, please tell us about your literature review.
So, ma'am, the literature content of this is that there has been a gender inequality gap, overburdening of responsibilities, domestic violence, and further compromising of health of the women migrant workers. So they have been severely impacted because they have lost their jobs during this period, uh, because it's because of this lockdown, men's were more preferable for the jobs, as 50% of the
Bharti,
labors.
Bharti, and this is for everybody, isn't it? It's not. I'm just not just talking to Bharti. This is for everyone. All of us are learning. Do you, when you're saying these things, is it just from common knowledge, or are you quoting some sources? And do you have any magnitude? How much was the
Ma'am,
impact?
actually, I have done a survey on it. I have myself interacted with the migrant women workers,
That is
and
correct. That is the primary study that you've done,
yes,
but there has to also be some existing literature which talks about a crisis and its impact, isn't it? There must be some studies on that. Have you referred that? Do you know how they measure? Do you know what the conceptualization is?
yes, ma'am, I do have some facts regarding it. How much population of it has been impacted.
All right, please continue.
So moving on to the gender inequality, as only 7% men were there who lost their jobs, but as compared to men, 47% women lost their jobs, and 92.4% migrant workers are engaged in the informal sector, and out of which women comprises of at least 57%, as they are working as a cleaning staff in different organization, or they are working as domestic helpers. So they are the ones who are majorly impacted. The workload on them, that is the unpaid workload on them, has actually increased by 30% according to a UN women report. And overburdening of responsibilities, they have been further overburdened with responsibilities. Earlier they used to work outside their houses for maximum, we could say, 8 hours, but now they have to work at their home all day 24/7, and it now the women have to work more than 12 hours a day at their home to manage their families. There have been mental pressure on them. They have been suffering from depression and various other issues, as they have taken debt for their survival, because they have no means of income, no means of survivorship. So they have to take debt because around 230 million people lost their job and slipped into poverty because of the lockdown. Around 1.46 lakh workers has actually applied to return to the state of Panipat, which is almost about 74.5% are residents of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So around the 92.4% migrant workers who were engaged in the informal sector, 55% of them are daily wagers. So they are the ones who are being majorly impacted, as there are more workers and less jobs, and the wages also fell by 15%. They are earning on an average 200 to 300 per day. So they are not able to pay their rents. They are not even able to afford medicines. Now, what about health? When it comes to health, women health was majorly impacted because they are living in unhygienic conditions, as we have studied, because they are residing in slums, they are currently living in slums, or maybe single room flats. So their health is being affected, their, especially their menstrual health is being impacted, because they don't have money to afford food even. So they did not afford, they were not able to afford menstrual hygiene supplies. And further, moving on to the maternity, the pregnant women and their health is majorly being impacted, because the delivery of the child at home in the absence of medical facilities and trained healthcare assistants increases depression or distress in women, because India's health services were already overburdened with COVID-19 patients. So their health was severely being impacted. It is a challenge for them to deal with those issues, because their mental health, at the same time physical health, was being impacted. Now there was another problem arising out of it, as the lockdown was going on. There were news regarding the domestic violence against the women. The women were actually staying at home for 24 hours with their abusers. So the problem arises of domestic violence. The basic reasons for domestic violence during this period was drinking and due to frustration, because the men were not able to earn, they were not going out, and they were there at home with their wives or women. So they had to suffer, they were tortured during this lockdown. There were various issues like anxiety they were facing with, and the cases of domestic violence has actually increased before, and there is a difference between before and after. About 86% women who encountered violence, they never complained about it. So I guess there, here the problem arises is that we should try to communicate with them. They are not telling, they are not reporting anywhere. This is because, majorly because of the reason of mentality, lack of education and lack of awareness among them. They have been also granted fundamental rights, but they don't know how to avail them. They are not being educated that they can take support of various facilities provided by the government. Now further moving on to the government support as well, the government of Haryana has actually launched an online portal for the helpless workers. So they also provided financial support to them, and there were many laws passed by the parliament for the upliftment of the poor women, as mentioned, support to training and employment program for women. For the upliftment of them, and the Rashtriya Mahila Kosh also provided microfinance services, and it helps in reducing gender inequality gap. So, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi also launched employment schemes for the migrant workers like Garib Kalyan Rozgar Yojana. So, though there were several laws passed by the government, but still it lacks proper implementation. As moving on to the ground level, the though the laws are being implemented, but they are not properly reached by the migrant workers. They are not able to get benefit of them. So I guess they are the ones, majorly population which is employed in the informal or unorganized sectors. So we should do something especially about women, because they are much more, compared to men, they are not preferable, or they are being discriminated at every place. After this lockdown period has started, they were being discriminated as domestic helpers, because it was a rumor that there are chances of spreading the disease by these marginalized section of the society. So I guess we should work towards it. And the conclusion is, of this study is that though COVID-19 had an major impact on the society, but the government has provided various laws and support to the migrant workers. But the major issue that came out after the study was the squandering livelihood and debt, because there were no livelihood means for them, and they had to borrow money from money lenders at a very high interest. This has actually overburdened them with a lot of responsibility. They have to survive within a minimal resources, and life in urban areas had further made it more difficult for them to survive, because they have to take care of the cleanliness and hygiene, and they were not able to afford the basic amenities that they should afford. Though the government has also launched various schemes providing food and 2-day meals and ration and stuff, but still they were not able to get benefit of them. Though it reached a few of them, but not all were benefited because of it. I guess profitable schemes should be introduced by the government under the appropriate environment should be provided by the government to the migrant women workers to work on these issues. Thank you.
So what is the format? Questions will be taken after the presentation. What is the format?
I think
It is up to the chair and the co-chair. If you want to put an immediate question, also you may.
Prabhu sir, what would you suggest?
ma'am, actually, that we have less time, so can we have it at the end of the session? Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Bharti. Very interesting work. Let's continue. Yeah.
Thank you, Bharti.
All right, so
Thank
we
you.
will move on to the next presenter, Anushri Saha. She has submitted a paper, an empirical study on the impact of COVID-19 on the women migrant laborers in the Siliguri Municipal Corporation area, Darjeeling district.
Is my screen visible?
Yes.
On the women migrant laborers in the Siliguri Municipal Corporation
Your voice is breaking, Anushri.
area.
It's getting stuck.
I think due to the video issues,
Yeah.
it's better if you share the slide and then speak up on. That would be better. Or else the bandwidth appears to be problematic here.
Anushri, are you able to hear us?
Honestly, if you are facing any issue, you can also respond to us in the chat box.
Hello?
Yes, Anushree.
My laptop crashed. Can I start again?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So can I just log in from my laptop as well so that I can share my PPT? Or
Ma'am,
should I present later on after some other speaker, because I guess that might take time.
All right, you may then do it after you have sorted out.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the accommodation.
All right.
Please invite the next.
All right. Yeah. So the next speaker is Ankit Kumar, who would be presenting for socio-economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women migrant workers. Ankit Kumar?
Yes, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes.
Just a second, I'll share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Could you put it on the slideshow mode?
good afternoon, everyone. Shall I start?
Ankit, your connectivity appears to be problematic. You can switch off your video and then do the presentation.
Right. Sir.
Yeah. Please go ahead, Ankit.
Yes, sir. I'm just switching off my video. Actually, I'm unable to go to the.
No issues. That appears at the top. You have to drag down that particular tab. Let it be. You continue, please.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Ankit Kumar, student of BBLLB third year, UPS Dehradun. I'm thankful to the institution and the authorities concerned for selecting my paper and allowing me to present here in this very conference. So, coming to my topic, socio-economic impact. Yeah. So, socio-economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women migrant workers. Coming to the introduction part, COVID-19 has manifested as a crisis affecting all aspects of human life in terms of livelihood and survival. The epidemic has disproportionately impacted the world's poor population. A big migrant labor crisis erupted in India. This research investigates the impact of COVID-19 on women migrant workers in this context. Loss of livelihood and accompanying debt compromises captivity, and the burden of responsibility disrupted access, emotional landscape of COVID-19, and the insufficient assistance were the themes established from the consequences and experience of women workers. They are the front line of COVID-19 pandemic all over the world. They labor in vital but low paying and vulnerable tasks such as health and care, nursing, cleaning, and laundry, putting them at high risk of COVID-19 infection. I'm sorry for the. Is it going well? Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Go ahead.
Okay, actually the electricity went, so
No
I thought
issues.
this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start again. They uh, they are the front line of the COVID-19 pandemic all over the world. They labor in vital but low paying and vulnerable tasks such as health and care, nursing, cleaning, and laundry, putting them at high risk of COVID-19 virus infection. They already face a variety of discrimination and inequalities as well as gender specific limitations in migration policy, insecure labor, racism, and xenophobia. They are more likely to lose their jobs. They have labor and human rights violated and become infected with the COVID virus. They are more likely to work in the informal economy, which is particularly in the domestic services and care sectors where they contract the contract are unstable and they have no paid leave or the option to work from home. They are basically more likely to work they are more likely to work time or on temporary basis. Their employment is basically frequently excluded from the contributing social insurance programs, resulting in inadequate and non-existence of safety nets of compensate for the for the lost income and liability. This research basically emphasizes the precarious situation of the women migrant workers, arguing that immediate governmental actions are needed to alleviate their poverty. The necessity of boosting society security measures can't be overstated. Coming to the factors affecting women migrant workers in COVID-19 pandemic. The first one is loss of livelihood. In several industries, women migrant workers are reportedly being laid off in huge numbers. Employees can be more employees can more easily terminate their employment in reaction to the economic collapse caused by the COVID-19 epidemic, because they tend to work in the informal economy and in insecure conditions with no formal employment contracts and limited coverage by labor regulations. Due to the economic downturn, women migrant workers are official employment are also at risk in losing their jobs. The next one is lack of social protection and healthcare. Because of the risk of penalties, imprisonment, incarceration, uh, or deportation, women migrant workers without health insurance or with irregular migratory status may be unwilling to comply with COVID-19 screening, testing, and treatment processes. The sexual and reproductive health of women migrant workers is jeopardized by a lack of health insurance and access to health care, which is exaggerated by COVID strain and health institutions. Coming to the next, limited freedom of movement. In the absence of social protection, women migrant workers are unable to return to work owing to travel restrictions, risk losing their livelihoods as well as the livelihoods of the families who rely on the remittances. Lockdowns in cities and provinces and countries have influence it's in some countries. Coming to the next, violence against women migrant workers. Gender based violence, intimate relationship violence, and sexual exploitations and abuse have all been shown to put women and girls, particularly migratory women and girls, at danger in the past. Multiple types of violences, such as human trafficking, child marriage, and sexual exploitation and abuse, are amplified using crisis situations as the Ebola outbreak demonstrated. COVID-19 is most certainly causing comparable patterns right now, and it will be disproportionately affecting migrant workers and girl childs due to their disadvantageous circumstances. Forced cohabitation, tight and concentrated living circumstances, economic stress, and worries catching the virus have all contributed to increase in domestic violence. Now, disrupted access to services. COVID-19 and lockdown has significantly interrupted normal access to resources, services, and the facilities. This has posed a particular difficulty for individuals living in slums who already had restricted areas access. The topic of interrupted access relates to participants' problems in obtaining required services and facilities during the lockdown and during the uh, epidemic, which increased the difficulty of the daily living. Coming to the next, women workers mired in formal sector. This might be due to the fact that it overstretches metropolitan areas and removes productive individuals from rural areas. State, national, municipal governments remain antagonists to migrants due to the perceived negative economical, political, and social impacts of migration, while employers frequently ignore legislation meant to safeguard their rights and needs. As a result, women migrants are frequently forced to live in illegal settlements with limited access to water, sewage, and power, as well as the constant fear of eviction, sickness, sexual assault, underpayment, and police harassment. Furthermore, migrants are frequently discriminated against, occasionally exploited, and are typically paid less than non migrant labor, with terrible working conditions. Next is vulnerability of women migrant workers. Migrants are more likely to particularly sensitive to the direct and indirect impacts of COVID-19 as they are in most other crises. A variety of factors such as their living and working conditions, lack of consideration of their cultural and linguistic background in service provision, xenophobia, limited local knowledge and networks, and their access to rights and level of inclusion in host communities may affect their ability to avoid vital contamination, receive appropriate health care, and survive the social, economical, and psychological effects of the pandemic. Next is role of social work in pandemic response. The elderly, improvised individuals with impairments and women migrant laborers have been particularly hard hit. In this context, Solomon Amundsen has issued a clarion call to the social work community, stating, "Unless we, the social work community, expedite action to respond to the world's major challenges, our profession may continue to be called into question, first by critics, citizens, then our client systems, and finally ourselves. To yet the whole burden of dealing with the India's problem has been placed on the government, police, and medical professionals. As a result, India's approach to the crisis has a number of significant flaws. This is, of course, necessitize the use of workers to fill in the gaps. The pandemic's raging attack on people and families along the India's massive deficiencies in public health infrastructure would necessitize social work initial reaction being within healthcare institutions in urban, suburban, and rural settings. So the conclusion is, as a result, the lockdown and limitations, women's access to services was severely disrupted. Migrant women and their families have few alternatives for maintaining acceptable social distance when living in urban ghettos. This resulted in a lot of worry. It was also clear that the participants are taking precautions to avoid contacting COVID-19 due to their fear of infection. Most of the women labor workers have not benefited from the government's efforts to help the most disadvantaged members of the society. Women migrant workers' contributions, on the other hand, are critical for the long-term viability of metropolitan economics. Thus, governmental measures and programs should prioritize them. Efforts should be taken to re-establish inclusive economic activity in which women migrant workers feel secure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankit.
Would the chair or the co-chair like to make any comment, or should we proceed to the next speaker?
I think that we have reserved that for towards the end,
Okay.
so we can
All
go
right.
to the next speaker.
Towards the end. Yeah.
So the next speaker, Anushri Saha, she has sent me her PPT. So I'll share it. I think Anushri, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Thank you, Ms. Mukherjee.
You're welcome. So you can start with your presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Anushri Shah, a student from Department of Law, University of North Bengal. I have done an empirical study on the impact of COVID-19 on the women migrant laborers in the Siliguri Municipal Corporation area. Now, the city of Siliguri is the gateway towards the northeast. Along with that, it even shares porous borders with the state of Bangladesh and Nepal. Now, could you please go to the next slide? Thank you. The research questions that I have put forth in my study are: number one, what are the orders the women migrant laborers are facing? Are they still employed? What is their present financial status? And the last question is, what are the steps that the government has taken to help them? Now, going towards the hypothesis, please change the slide. Yeah. So in this constant battle of right to livelihood versus right to life in this present pandemic era, we have seen that the marginalized people are the worst affected, and women laborers especially are in their worst, like it's the worst for the worst, right? And for that particular reason, they do not have jobs at this present moment, and their financial status as well as social status has degraded a lot. Now the objective, next slide. Now the objective of my study was to find the plight of the women migrant laborers during the COVID-19 pandemic in the Siliguri Municipal Corporation area. Next slide, please. The research methodology that I have focused on, I had chosen 200 women laborers by random sampling methods, and I had put forth to them questions regarding their financial and social status or conditions that were both open-ended as well as close-ended. Please, next slide. Now, the first question that I asked them was whether they which sector of labor do they belong to. 55.5% of these women belong to unorganized sectors. That is, they were either working as house helps or as constructor workers or as waitresses in various eateries, etc. 3% of them were independent contractors. That is, they had their own eateries or they had their own beery shops and all that. 41.5% of them were working in the organized sectors. That is, they were working basically in the tea factories and tea estates, etc. Next question, next slide, please. Then the second question that I had put forth to them, whether they were migrant laborers or not. 60% of the women were migrant laborers. 11.5% said that they were not migrant laborers, and 28.5% of them did not want to answer the question. Now, in the 60% of population, most of them belonged to various parts of West Bengal itself, mostly Kurseong, Kalimpong, Darjeeling, and Duars areas. There were women who belonged to Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and few of them, although they did not disclose the fact, but few of them were also from Nepal and Bangladesh. Moving forward to the next slide. I asked them whether they received adequate remuneration or not. The women rather, who were working in the organized sector, that is in the tea factories or the tea estates, they stated that they do receive adequate remuneration. 25% of the women were of the viewpoint that they did not receive adequate remuneration. And interestingly, majority of these women did not even know what their adequate remuneration was. But however, all of them had one single complaint, apart from the ones who were in the organized sectors. They stated that their male counterparts receive more remuneration than them for the work that they do, especially as constructor workers or sweepers. If we see that the women laborers appeared to be more they were more financially weaker than the male counterparts for the same work that they were doing. Now, moving on to the next slide. The next question that I had asked them was that, were they migrant laborers during the pandemic hit years? 60% of them said that they stayed back in Siliguri. 28.5% did not want to answer the question, and 11.5% said that since they were the natives of Siliguri, the question of being in migrant labor did not arise. Moving forward to the next question. I asked them whether their family accompanied them or not. Almost 71% of these women said that they were accompanied by their families, or rather I can say that they had to accompany their husbands and follow wherever their husband went. 29.17% on the other hand stated that they were on their own and their husbands and children were there in the native places. Moving forward to the next question. I asked them whether they had been vaccinated or not. 66% of them were of the opinion that they did get single dose of the vaccine. Only 22.5% of them received the double dose, and 11.5% of them had not received any vaccination whatsoever. Now, a complaint from all of these women were that since they were not technically that knowledgeable, so what happened to them was that it was very hard for them to register themselves in the CoWIN application, and they had to pay other people so that they could be registered in the application and later on book their slots and go and get the vaccination. Another problem that most of these women stated that the vaccination centers that were provided by the governmental institutes, what happened there were long queues and they had to stand there for hours. There were many women over there who preferred going to private sectors, private vaccination centers, my bad. And over there, they had to pay 800 rupees to get their vaccination. Moving forward to the next question. Now, I had asked them that at present, do they have any work or not? 53.5% of them said that in this present, like during the second wave of the pandemic, people were a little less discriminatory and they did have house help during the second wave. During the first wave, most of the households did not have any work. 18% of these women said that they seldom get work because they are constructor workers and it's upon their contractors to provide them work, and that's very seldom in nature. 28.5% of the women said that at present they do not have any work and they're dependent either on their savings or on their husband's income, and this is the reason why domestic violence against them has also increased, because most of these husbands were habituated in using their wife's money for their sweet enjoyments, and right now, since they're dependent on their husbands, the husbands have gone towards the extent of violence against these women. Now, moving forward to the next question, I asked them whether they have applied or received Swasthya Saath Kashmir Bhandar or not. Now, these are two governmental schemes that have been introduced by the government of West Bengal. Now, the Swasthya Saathi scheme is basically a health insurance that has been provided by the government of West Bengal, and it covers up to rupees 5 lakh. Now, one interesting fact about this scheme is that in this scheme, the women of the house are portrayed to be the head of the family members, and the other members are under the name of these women. And in Lakshmi Bhandar, this is an economic initiative that the government has taken. That is, over here, women belonging to the general category receive 500 rupees a month, and women belonging to SC/ST category receive 1,000 rupees a month from the government of West Bengal. This is done to give economic empowerment to the women. Now, 39% of the entire universe stated that they have received both this scheme. Now, this Lakshmi Bhandar scheme is a very new scheme that has been launched recently, past month, if I'm not mistaken. So only just 39% of them have received this. Now, 47.5% of these women have said that they have received only Swasthya Saathi scheme, and 13.5% of these women have not received these facilities because they are not the inhabitants of West Bengal, and hence they do not have the papers from West Bengal, and that is the reason why they cannot apply for either of these schemes. Moving forward to the next slide, I asked them what was the financial impact that they are presently facing. Now, this was an open-ended question, and I received numerous responses. When I clubbed it as a close-ended, when I tried to club it rather as a close-ended question, what we came to know over here is that maximum amount of the universe have very less or no savings whatsoever, and they are in a very bad situation, and it's very hard for them to make two ends meet. However, 17% of these women, again, these were mostly from the organized sectors. They said that they do have sufficient savings as of now, and they can continue. Moving forward to the next slide, the question that I asked them was, can you please change the slide? Yeah. So I asked them was whether the government had helped them during the pandemic or not. Now, most of them, the majority said that they did receive help from the government, like the ration and all. 13.5%, however, said that since they did not have proper papers, so that is the reason why they did not receive any governmental help. However, in unison, all of them said, the entire universe said that they did receive help from the NGOs and private individuals, and hence it was only because of this factor that it was possible for them to let the pandemic, it was possible for them to pass through the pandemic and survive. Moving forward to the last question that I asked them was whether their children are still enrolled. I'll just take 2 more minutes. Now, the last question that I asked them was whether their children were enrolled in schools or not. Now, 30% of these women said that their children are still enrolled in schools. 27% of them said that since their economic condition had worsened a lot, that is the reason why they preferred their children to help them economically and work. And 43% of the women said that they do not have any children. Now, one thing that I'd like to point out over here is that although 30% of the women said that their children are still enrolled in schools, a very sad state of fact is that the government institutes in West Bengal, they are not having online classes up to class 8. So these children, they are not able to have the education that they're supposed to have. Now, I would like to go to the last slide. That is my conclusion and suggestions. Ms. Mukherjee, if you could please change the slide. Thank you. Now, although the government did help this sector of marginalized people to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic, we did have various economical schemes. They were given rations and summit trains, special summit trains and everything were introduced. The judiciary also did a very good role during this period. However, one fact that came to point was that although we have a legislature named the Interstate Migrant Workers Act 1979, where it is essential for the state and the central governments to maintain the records of the migrant workers, but that was not done, and that did appear to be a very major problem during the pandemic. Now, the state should also have thought about the vaccination or the registration for the vaccination of the people who are illiterate or not technologically advanced. Another problem that was faced was that the women migrant laborers, or women in general, especially from the marginalized sectors, they had to face a lot of health facility problems because all the healthcare workers were busy fighting the pandemic. Now, another factor which I also talked about was that domestic violence had increased during this period. So the law enforcement agencies should be more vigilant. The last suggestion that I would give is that the NGOs, along with the government, should come forward and they should initiate awareness programs where the women migrant laborers are not only taught about their labor rights, but also their domestic rights and fundamental rights. So whenever they are somewhere, if they are suppressed, then they can go and they can report the same to the appropriate bodies. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will move on to the next speaker. So we have received a request from Ms. Risha, I guess, who wanted to make the presentation. Because they have to leave for moot court competition.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Can you give me a minute so that I can share my PPT?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just 1 second.
Yes. Is the PPT visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Risha Kulshresht, and my co-author and I have authored the paper titled Women Migrant Workers, Case of Triple Discrimination. So, in India, migrant workers are often on the receiving end of discriminatory practices. Did I start from? So sorry. Yes. So in India, migrant workers are often on the receiving end of discriminatory practices. However, when it specifically comes to the women migrant workers, their discrimination is amplified due to multiple socioeconomic factors. They undergo a great deal of hardship due to being a worker in the first place. And additionally, being a woman often takes a toll on their health, safety, and security. In India, where laws are not uniform, where labor laws are not uniform across states, women migrant workers have to suffer suffer immense hardship on a daily basis. They often have little or no control over their earnings and are required to work for excessive hours. They also frequently operate in hazardous environments and are subjected to various forms of gender-based abuse as well. So there are multiple reasons why women migrate. The most prominent of them being marriage. So due to their husband's residence or place of job being in a different state, they have no option left but to migrate to that particular state. Other factors include lack of money in the household, dissatisfaction at work and home, lack of employment in the state, deteriorating living conditions, lack of safety, security, and lack of health conditions in particular state they are living in. Moving on to the constitutional basis of the rights of women migrant workers, the same can be classified under two heads. First one includes the fundamental rights, which essentially consists of the golden triangle of Article 14, 19, and 21. Due to paucity of time, I won't be going into the details of each and every article. I'll be just mentioning them. Other than the golden triangle, we have Article 15, 16, and 17, which provide for prohibition of discrimination, equal opportunity, and prohibition of untouchability, respectively. These articles also hold immense relevance. The second head deals with the DPSPs, such as Article 38 and 39. Most importantly, Article 41 deals with the right to work, and Article 42 deals with just and humane work conditions along with maternity leave. A combined reading of all these articles provide that states should make adequate provisions for workers' right to work within its economic capacity and development. While doing so, the state should ensure that working conditions do not further deteriorate the health of the workers. Among the DPSPs, Article 43 is critical as it provides workers and as it protects workers and provides living wages to them, which in turn entails a decent standard of life in suitable conditions of work. Now, moving on to triple discrimination. This is the most important part of our research paper. So, a case of triple discrimination refers to three layers of discrimination that women migrant laborers experience in their day-to-day lives. It is not a theory. It is not a hypothetical scenario. It is the lived experience of numerous women. So, starting with discrimination as migrants, migrant workers, when compared to the nationals working their entire lives in one country, face major legal and practical obstacles in accessing social protection benefits. They are denied access or they have limited access to social security because of their status or nationality. The government of India and of various states failed to incorporate the fact that the majority of these migrant laborers are unskilled and uneducated, with almost negligible knowledge and understanding of their rights and entitlement. A large number of these interstate migrant workers are unregistered, and as such, there exists a wide gap in the enforcement of existing legislations related to the welfare and social protection. Next is discrimination as workers. So besides lacking social safeguard and utter violation of their human and constitutional rights, the laborers of unorganized sector often find themselves working for hours way beyond their statutory requirement of 48 hours a week, for which they are never compensated either in terms of money or in terms of other amenities. The legislature does not fail the migrant workers per se, but it is the executive and the local authorities who fail these laborers who migrate in hope of better life, but they end up living according to the whims and fancies of these employers and contractors. Lastly, discrimination as women. In India, the labor force lacks the participation of women laborers owing to the high rates of gender-based violence and lack of legislative and executive protection catered specifically to women laborers. Thus, women as laborers who migrate in search of better economic opportunities, whether interstate or intrastate, often find themselves at the receiving end of discriminatory practices, which deny them the right to equal opportunities in matter of employment and ultimately serve as an obstacle to their development and advancement towards a better life. The women migrant work discrimination in their daily lives. Moving on to the legal framework. In India, the issue of triple discrimination in the case of women migrant workers can be studied under the light of three different categories of legislation. The first, the organizing one, is the general laws that deal with labor issues, and the last one are women-specific legislations. I'll be just reading out the name of these statutes as we have discussed the provisions in length in our paper. So under legislations dealing with migrants and unorganized workers, there are two statutes. That is Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Condition of Service Act 1979. And the second one is the Unorganized Workers Social Security Act 2008. Under labor-specific legislations, there are a number of labor legislations in India that individually deal with separate subject matters. For instance, we have the Payment of Wages Act, the Employees Compensation Act, the Equal Remuneration Act. However, the issue is that it does not cover the unorganized sector, including migrant women workers, thereby keeping them out of the loop of any legislative benefits. Lastly, we have two women-specific legislation. The first one is the Maternity Benefit Act, and the second act that hold relevance is the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Act 2013 that was enacted in lieu of the Vishaka case. Therefore, from an analysis of these categories of statutes, it is quite evident that although separate legislations exist to address individual issues, however, they are not coherent and wide enough to provide redressal to the women migrant workers. Now, my co-author Arunima will be taking the presentation forward and she'll be dealing with the conclusion.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone present here. May I go forward with the last portion of our research paper?
Please go ahead.
Thank you, sir. When we conducted this research, we found out that in our conclusion, we need a central legislation in place. So in spite of having multiple legislations at the central and state level, the safeguarding provisions and legislations still remain dispersed and scattered. There is no uniformity or coexistence among the several enacted legislations. We see that there are several legislations in place, but despite the fact of these presence of these legislations, we still see migrant women workers facing gender-based violence and being underpaid and often facing sexual harassment at the workplace. The current labor laws for migrant workers are applicable to all such establishments or contractors who employ 5 or more migrant workers, but the proposed labor codes by the central government applies only to all such establishments or contractors who employ 10 or more migrant workers. This bars several such migrant workers who are employed in smaller organizations and establishments from the benefits of the proposed legislation. Additionally, regardless of the fact that an act has been put in place to prevent any kind of gender-based violence against female employees, whether in organized or unorganized sector, the implementation of the act in the unorganized sector remains a dream. The unorganized sector is constituted by such female employees who are generally domestic workers or construction site workers and remain largely unaware of their rights as enshrined in the several legislations that we listed out or the Constitution of India. This leads to a conclusion that there is an urgent need of legal aid to be provided to such female employees who are constantly abused by their employers and contractors. I would like to highlight the real estate infrastructure development sector of the country, which is, even though it is regulated by the Central Act, the RERA 2016 Act, it fails to provide for the rights of the laborers so employed by the builders, such as to prevent them from being abused, overworked, or exploited. We see that the women present on-site do not have washroom facilities or crèche facilities. They are often underpaid and they don't even have proper shelter. So it is therefore in this slide that there is an imminent need for a contextualized legislation which is specifically catered to the female migrant laborers. Further in our paper, we have proposed certain legislative reforms that can be introduced in the said central legislations or the proposed central legislation. Firstly, there needs to be a clear definition of who constitutes as a female migrant worker or laborer, which shall necessarily include domestic workers and on-site construction workers. The legislation should mention a specified number of female migrant workers required to be employed in order to confer the benefits of the so enacted legislation. It should provide for stricter implementation of sexual harassment law and confer the liability on the contractors and state legal service authorities of the destination state to educate and promote the rights of the female migrant laborers. It should also confer the responsibility on the local police to ensure the prohibition of trafficking, sexual exploitation, and any kind of gender-based violence against female migrant laborers. The same can be achieved by providing a mandatory provision for the registration of the laborers in the destination state with the local police. Further, we also insist on a collaboration between the Ministry of Labor, Human Rights Commission and the National Commission for Women to ensure the collection of relevant data, which will help in the better implementation of the reforms and also to guide the migrant laborers in their destination state. Therefore, as per our analysis, these reforms, if introduced and implemented properly, will definitely help in improving the status and condition of women migrant workers in India. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We had received a request from Ms. Risha and Ms. Arunima that they have a moot court competition at 3:30. So they have made the presentation. So if you have if the chair and the co-chair have any comments to make or any questions for this particular presenters, so maybe you can put it to them right now.
I have one specific question with respect to this research paper. What exactly the difference that your research made, first of all? What exactly the position before doing your research, and what you have contributed in your research paper, and that in this paper?
So, sir, in our paper, we have highlighted how women migrant workers face triple discrimination. So it is not just because they are women; it is because they are women, they are migrants, and they are workers. So they have added layer of discrimination upon them, and we have proposed certain amendments that can be made in the form of a central legislation to deal with the issue at hand in a more comprehensive manner.
As you have suggested a kind of an proposed legislation, a new legislation to resolve those particular conflict and then to provide remedies therefore, do you think that existing laws and system doesn't provide any specific remedy to them as of now?
So they are not coherent in nature. So they are not in consonance with each other, and the actual gap exists in the enforcement. So it is the executive and the local authorities who need to revamp their system to ensure that the actual benefits are being provided to these workers.
So do you say that the existing system that and the enforcement mechanism are not actually delivering the output that we look for? Is that
Yes,
your
sir,
point?
as per the review of literature that we went through various census and the reports of ILO. So what we found out that there does exist an implementation gap that needs to be addressed.
So when there is an implementation gap, then why you need to add more and more legislation to that point?
So if there is a central legislation then it will definitely be more, it will definitely bring more impact, and it will definitely benefit a much wider crowd. That's what we proposed.
Okay, thank you. Madam?
Risha, yeah,
Yeah.
Risha, I had a similar question that if the existing legislations are not enforced and do not have efficacy, then what?
Ma'am, I can't hear you. Can I wear my earphones? You're not audible. Just a second.
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
Hear me. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So during COVID itself, we've seen a lot of central legislations which have not been efficacious. So just bringing forth the central legislation, do you think will be the answer? Because the Epidemic Act, all of those under which the lockdowns came were all central legislation, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Does it have the similar efficacy? The disease.
Yes, ma'am. So definitely bringing in more legislations won't do. What we also need is better implementation.
No, what we are looking for is this. Have you thought of processes and methods for better implementation on one side and covering the gaps of the existing legislation on the other? For example, you could have told us that, okay, this is the budgetary outlay that is required. Nothing is free. Should happen, but you tell us about, the allocation, tell us about the manpower that is allotted towards a particular form of a legislation. or you can tell us that, okay, this is the additional amount of budgetary outlay that is required. That would, give us some sense of in what way will we be able to make it more effective. The additional, legislations within a centralized, framework. But I mean, just by saying we should, will it? Because in the past, we have not seen that. Because before you, I'm sure 20 years, students have been saying, this should happen, and this should happen, and this should happen, right? What are the ways? What are the cause and effect measures? Maybe that could help.
Good afternoon, ma'am. I'm Arunima, the co-author of this research paper. So, in addition to my co-author's Risha's point of view, I would like to say that in our research paper, we found out that despite the sexual, for instance, we have the Sexual Harassment Act, Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, but still we see that the implementation remains ineffective. And we believe that it is majorly due to the fact that the interested parties are not represented adequately. So, for instance, we see that in all these laws, the women don't find their place despite the laws being for them. So, what we have proposed in our research paper that this layering can be removed only if the interest of the laborers are accounted for, especially female laborers. So even though we did not go into the budgetary expansion or the introduction of induction of budgetary expenses in the legislations, we found that if we were to give representation to the women in the decision making bodies, for instance, we include more involvement of the National Commission for Women while enacting such laws which are specified for female migrant laborers, we might find more better reforms and implementation and better facilities being provided to women, because we see there's a power hijacked by men in the legislative and the executive. We often see that the police also is filled with men, and I don't think they have been able to articulate the problems that female migrant workers face. So I think we need more representation, and then maybe we do not even need new laws. I think we'll be able to suffice with the existing framework and better protection of female migrant workers.
But Arunima, you have not discussed this part in your paper, na?
Ma'am, we did when we have explained the triple discrimination. We did, ma'am, and we have also specified that despite provisions being there for payment of equal remuneration, we often find that the contractors tend to underpay female migrant workers.
Part Arunima, you could have given more time and more kind of explanation to this decision-making role. That's a very important part.
Yes, ma'am.
Extremely important, and that is fundamentally the crux of the problem, rather than what you have highlighted, that a centralized, more comprehensive framework. That's exactly the point that Mahendra sir and myself are making. That you already have a system, you want to have another, system, but you're keeping status quo the same. Point is, if we change the status quo, then even with these existing, legislations, we can have better outcomes.
Yes, ma'am.
Last question to you, two very brilliant presenters, is this: what is the interdisciplinary aspect of your paper? Because remember, the conference is an interdisciplinary perspective.
Ma'am, I think we have shown that the law cannot exist in isolation. So the main crux of a paper where we highlight that why the legislations have failed female migrant workers, I think it is mainly because the legislators failed to accommodate the interest of female migrant workers, and that is why their interests are not reflected in the existing legal framework. And we proposed
take this as a suggestion, think about it, because when you're writing a paper for an interdisciplinary conference, there has to be a substantial component of interdisciplinarity.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is missing. I mean, you are answering because we are asking the question. It is not in your paper. when you're presenting a paper for a conference like this, very, very clearly you should understand the objective and clearly formulate your paper according to that requirement, that necessity, you know.
Yes,
Otherwise,
ma'am.
in bigger and more competitive conferences, your paper will not be selected only because it is primarily law. You are not
Yes.
talking about anything other than the legislative framework. So keep that in mind, think about it, and incorporate it.
Ma'am, we
Yes,
actually we
ma'am.
have added World Bank reports to supplement our arguments. So we could not delve deeper into that, but we'll keep it in mind and we'll make some changes in the paper.
Risha, random mentioning of World Bank reports does not make a paper interdisciplinary.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, we'll keep that in mind, definitely.
Thank you. Best wishes. Thank you very much.
All right. We will move on to the next speaker, Rupak Kumar Joshi.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello.
you're audible.
Am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Joshi.
And also for the presenters, we would appreciate if you could start with highlighting the interdisciplinarity of your paper.
Hello. Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Is a vulnerable workforce, women migrant workers in COVID-19 pandemic. So, good afternoon, all of you. I'm an assistant professor in law at FI University, Dehradun. As far as ma'am's asked me to
I think there is a connectivity problem.
Mr. Joshi, are you able to hear us?
Better, Mr. Rupak, could you please turn off your video and then do the presentation?
Mr. Joshi, if you're able to hear us, could you please turn off your video? You can type to us in the chat box in case you're not able to speak to us.
We can ask the next presenter till the time this can be solved.
I think currently we don't have any other speaker left, means from the participant list, they cannot be seen in the attendee list. So I think those who had to present have already presented. So we can move towards the question answers. If
Prabhu sir, can I ask you to take over?
Yes, ma'am. Wait, give me a second. I think that The first person, Elizabeth KJ, I think they did that. The concerned speaker didn't present.
Yeah,
Am I
she
right?
didn't present. Yeah, she
Yeah.
didn't present.
And then the second speaker, that is Bharti Bareja, whether she is there.
Yes, she's there. Bharti is there. Yes.
Yeah. So Bharti, I have one particular specific question to you. As you have said that you have done a kind of an empirical research, may I know the methodologies that you have utilized, as well as on what basis that you made your a kind of a research output on your research. So this is my specific question, and as well as the difference that probably that you can able to point out that what is there actually before your research, and then what difference that your research actually brought into. So the new things that you have discovered or else been like able to interpret from your empirical based study. Could you please explain to us?
Bharti?
I think, is she there? If you have any problem, you can put up in the chat box.
Miss Bharti, are you there? Just 1 second.
Okay, then in that case, can we pass on some comments, madam, with the approval of the chair?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes,
With
sir.
respect to her presentation, what I mainly observed was like very generic in the sense what we know probably could have happened in this particular COVID era that is again being presented in that paper. Though the researcher claimed to have conducted the empirical study, the difference that could have been made, obviously, while going through the paper, I think that the researcher have to work on that further. So this is my observation, and probably the comment could have reached the researcher as of now, and the expectation with respect to the research, that any research that probably going on, there must be some kind of a credible research output. So something new, or else in a way, in a sense, not completely new, somewhat a kind of a newer dimension or an interpretation, if that is made, probably that we will definitely appreciate that fact. So that is what that we are looking for too. So Bharti, that if you can able to focus more on your empirical research that you have said that you have conducted, and then to deliver the result of the same, it would be even more better. So this is my observation and comment on that, and I request the chair to provide the comments in this.
I would like to, actually see in entire domain of research, especially when we migrant workers, micro studies are very important because macro studies is a very generic understanding. I was very interested in this paper, your notice, because it was, specifically to a textile mill in Panipat. It was a very focused micro study. It started like that, but as you correctly pointed out, the methodology and the analysis are missing. And also, what I told the researcher that her understanding of review of literature is little incomplete. because primary work can happen based on conceptual constructions that are taken from existing literature. So these are the two inputs. One is that it has potential to be a good study because it is a micro study on migrants. A micro study, therefore it has potential to be a very good study. But some limitations with regard to an understanding of review of literature, the methodology, the these will be 3-4 comments on this paper. Yes. Can go to the next.
Thank you,
Paper.
The next one, as per the list that we have, Anushree Saha. I think,
Yes, sir.
yeah. So it is your work actually from your title itself, like an empirical study, and you have very well stated that the kind of the workers that you are actually, I mean, the migrant laborers that you have researched into. My question to you is that you have done a kind of a sample study in a particular district, and probably on what basis that you think that it could be that the output that you made it as a kind of an conclusion, it would be like applicable to that of a generic mean. So this is my question to you very specifically on that part.
Sir, just like you said, like I have basically focused on Siliguri Municipal Corporation area, and my universe for 200 women laborers.
Okay.
And based on the suggestions that I made, sir, that suggestion was not generic to this women, but rather based on my study, what I understood that what is the plight of the women laborers in general. On that basis, I focused and I said that, like, for example, the 1979 Act of the Interstate Migrant Workers, over there, the state and the central are supposed to maintain a data regarding the number of migrant workers that are going from one state to another. That is not maintained. So that should have taken place. Further, like, since domestic violence, we all know, has increased post-pandemic, so the law enforcement agency should be a little more vigilant towards this marginalized sector, so that, because let's face it, being very honest, they are more like they're sufferers of domestic violence in general, like more. And the other one that I said is that there should be awareness programs for these women, so that they can know about their rights, be it their labor rights or their domestic rights or fundamental rights, so that they can further, like, it will be easier for the law enforcement agencies to act in their favor. And, like, based with the aid of legal aid, with the help of legal aid, these women can come out and they protect their rights which are there under various legislations, the constitution.
Thank you. And one thing that I have very specific with respect to your study is like that you say that you have interviewed a lot of different people while doing that empirical research. And any specific issue, and instead of generalizing as a kind of an whole, any specific issue as to the Darjeeling district that you can able to find out very peculiar.
Sir, it's not related to this particular topic, but one thing that is there in this area of ours is that there's a like, as I already mentioned, that Siliguri is a gateway towards the northeast, and it even has porous boundaries with the state of Nepal and Bangladesh, right? So
Yeah.
I have done certain empirical works prior to this also, and that was based on human trafficking. We did it with our department. So over there, we did come to know that from the northeast as well as this countries, neighboring countries, there's a problem of human trafficking, especially women and children. That's there.
Okay, fine. Thank you. And over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Anushree, from what you just now said, this actually answers. First of all, though, again, it's a micro level study, so it's a very, it has potential to really, add to the existing knowledge. One is that. Second is scientific in its methodology also. But I would ask you to this answer that you gave just now, because I was thinking when you say that X, I don't know, 40% do not want to respond,
Yes, ma'am.
And what I'm telling you is I don't think that is necessarily awareness. You should, kind of push that further and see, is it awareness or is it this fact that maybe they are, illegally inside Siliguri, and so it would be more hesitancy than not being aware, because that was a question that comes very clearly, that how come because
Ma'am,
of
I'm not audible.
because of the special situation of Siliguri that you mentioned. I think that's a question that should be, that should be explored a little more, and then that gets kind of tuned into this porous borders and this problem with women migrants, isn't it? So that adds another layer.
Yes, ma'am.
Else, yeah, I found your outcomes quite encouraging, actually. Vis-a-vis, so for future research, maybe a comparative study would give us some very interesting insights. You could take another state, maybe a richer state, for example, Gujarat, and do this similar kind of a study and see how does it compare. Because your outcomes are, if you do this in Gujarat, you will not get these outcomes. You will
Yes,
not
ma'am.
get these outcomes. So that might be something that you can do at another level. But please delve into that distinction that I mentioned.
I will, ma'am. Certainly, I will.
That will give us, this specific feature of Siliguri will come very strongly there. Good paper, good attempt, Anushri.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. And then I think that we can move on to the next person. I think it is Rupa Kumar Joshi. Am I right? Good morning, ma'am.
Rupak Kumar Joshi is the one who got disconnected in between. We have
Okay.
Ankit Kumar.
Okay. Wait a second. Okay. Ankit Kumar done a study on the socio-economic impact of COVID-19 pandemic on women migrant workers. So I have some specific question, as if like the topic though seems to be very generic. What exactly the specific outcome of the research? If it is being explained, it would be very well to have a kind of a look upon. Ankit, can you able to hear me?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So, sir, basically the basic outcome of this research
It's
was
not basic, it's like specific outcome. That
right.
is what I have asked for. Yeah.
Okay. So the specific outcome of this research was to get the um, it specifically emphasizes the precarious situations of women migrant workers, arguing that the immediate government actions are needed to alleviate their poverty. The necessity of bolstering society security measures can't be overstated. So that was the specific outcome of this research.
Okay, fine. And then could you please come up with your hypothesis? I mean, a kind of statement that you had at the time of your research, and how that it has been progressed throughout that particular research part. Have you
So
developed any hypothesis for that?
am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Or else you can also cite some review of literatures that you have done before the study. Could you please enlighten us on to the review of literature on that part? Can you able to hear us, Ankit? You are not audible, Ankit. I can able to hear you. Runmoy ma'am, can you able to hear him?
No, he's not audible.
Okay. Can we wait, or else we can move on to the other person? And
Let's move on.
Anika.
Let's move
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Thank you. So the next person in that particular lineup of presentations,
I don't think we have, because the other
yeah,
team, they have already, I think,
yeah,
they have already
they
given the comments and they've
comments,
asked them the
yes.
question.
Okay, fine.
That's
So
fine. Yeah, I think we have not left out anybody.
So I request the comment of the chair for the on the overall presentation, and then to provide us the inputs on this particular key topic.
All right. So I must thank the Vice Chancellor, Ms. Elizabeth Madam, Shanti Samantha Madam. Since Prabhu sir is also from TNLU and our host, I don't know your name, Madam, please. I thank all of you for this honor, invitation for the virtual national conference on interdisciplinary perspectives into the issues of women migrant workers and laws in India. So I'm thanking you for, of course, the invitation, but more so, I am congratulating you on this extremely important conference because migration today has taken on the concept of feminization of migration. You know, in the 19th and 20th century, 55% male comprised of this migration. In the 1990s and 21st century, this is global, world figures, 55%. So 1990s and 21st century, 55% were women. So this is actually feminization of migration that we are talking about. This session is dedicated to COVID, yes, but women migrant is a much larger phenomena. It is not just related to, the visibility that COVID has given women migrants, and more so given the reality of climate change, the possibility of mutation of the virus, the frequent and increasing natural disasters that we see. This kind of obstructions to life will be more the rule than the exception. So therefore, I'm congratulating you on two counts. One, that this is not one in a while, phenomena that is being studied. Women migrants and associated issues have been there, will remain in a more critical phase in days to come. And it represents the feminization of migration and therefore the feminization of poverty. So therefore, looking at the dimensions of the scale that this problem has attained, to be able to get the younger people to think about this in a scientific manner and not think about this in terms of, there's one more point that I would really want everyone to hold on to. Not just if you're talking about, these vulnerable sections who are, domestic help and construction site workers. No, because women migration is something that is not only the phenomena of interstate migration, it is also international migration, which is growing at a very, very large scale. So there are issues. I would have, there are issues of women migrants with regard to international mobility also, and in that we will be able to associate ourselves, because many of us would be going out for education or going out for a job, for a short time, and then maybe some of us settle down there. But otherwise, even the upward mobile women, educated women of India, belong to this category of women migrants. So I wanted to just shift the focus not only from very vulnerable and low income groups, which come under the definition, primarily come under the definition of migrant workers, but also look at this phenomena from three prisms. One, that migration is the kind of neoliberal economy that we have. Migration is a least cost instrument, least cost factor of production for global output. So, which means that just like China and just like India, we are nothing but a global workforce, underpaid global workforce. So migration is a phenomena which will become increasingly more intense because of the disruptions that I told you in terms of climate change, mutants of virus, so on and so forth. And it is taking more and more the form of feminization of migration. And given the neoliberal regime, this is going to be increased because like I said, women are a low cost factor input, and that could be unskilled women workers and skilled women workers also. So that is the importance of the conference to my mind. As far as the papers are concerned, presenters have attempted a good job. Only thing is, a little more understanding of a scientific approach to research, because then only this question that Prabhu sir has been posing all the time, that what has been your new knowledge, what has been the creation of new information. That can only happen when we structure the research paper in a manner that we can go a little vertically in depth rather than so there were too many variables that were taken in the papers. I would suggest that, so when you say plight of women, so how do you measure this plight? There are so many phenomena in plight. So idea is to define plight. Within plight you have very clearly 2-3 measures, and then you just stick to that. Then the paper is not very wide. It is defined. The scope is defined. It is narrow, according to which one can create the hypothesis, the methodology, so on and so forth. But most important is that young people have thought about it. They are sensitive about it. But only thing is, don't think about it only from the perspective of domestic help and construction workers. I want you to look at it from the perspective of all of us. It's an all-encompassing phenomena. It's an all-encompassing phenomena because crisis is going to mount and migration is going to increase, and therefore we will all be at the mercy of the vagaries of being migrants in some way or the other. Also, very importantly, it would have been nice if we could look into the recent Nobel laureate in economics, David Card. His contribution is very important in migration. I was hoping, because it is an interdisciplinary conference, I was hoping it will be mentioned at some point of time, but it was not. So yes, like I said, interdisciplinary would mean that you have to get at least 2 disciplines to integrate. It could be economics, it could be sociology. And the framework of your paper should be able to clearly define that. That's important. See, I'm not criticizing any paper. I'm saying it's a great attempt. I'm just saying that interdisciplinarity is very, very less explored in India. We generally do a domain specialized kind of a, studies and then we do research in that. It's a very isolated form. Developed world is not like that. In the developed world, there has been for the last 60 years focus on bringing a few disciplines together, because what Mahendra sir is saying, that where is the new knowledge? The new knowledge will happen. The former director of IIM, Professor Anand, I remember his words. He used to say that, you know what, new grass grows, you know, so you have two concrete, what do you call it, tiles on the floor. In between, you know, where the two tiles are put, in between there's a bit of mud. That is where the new grass grows. You know, that is interdisciplinarity. When you bring two domains together, you will find new knowledge. For example, you could have done a cost-benefit analysis of the legislation. So when we propose a new legislative framework, it is so, is it free? Right? Is it easier? Is it more efficient to get the previous legislations more efficacious, make it more implementable? Of course, that would also take costs, but those would be lower costs compared to getting an entirely new framework to the administrative domain. So point is, there are multiple ways of doing that. I strongly urge these students to train themselves. If you are a part of an interdisciplinary conference, which you will be more and more as time goes on, because the new education policy has clearly stated that education is going to be interdisciplinary in India. After a very long time, it has come about, but it has come about. So finally, as we see, universities are wanting to, you know, move in that manner. But we have to justify the theme of the conference also. If these papers were integrated with had an interface with history, you would have had some very amazing outcomes. Because the way, you know, what is the dominant narrative? The dominant narrative is unprecedented crisis. That is not correct. If you look at a historical background, it is not unprecedented crisis. 100 years back, you had a very, very big epidemic. In 100 years, every 10 years, we've had some kind of an epidemic. 100 years back, it was pandemic, but after every 10 years, you have an epidemic. So what is unprecedented about it? So if you bring history in it, it is no more unprecedented. If you bring economics in it, it is you change the understanding altogether. If you bring sociology in it, very, very interesting. If you look at it from sociology and economic perspective, you will see most of the migration comes from agriculture. So history, economics, if we take together, most of the migration over multiple years are coming from agriculture. Why do we know this? So look at the historical role of policies in legislative frameworks. Because food crop, the pattern of cropping from food crop has changed to cash crop. When you had food crop, you had food in the house, you didn't need to migrate. But when you moved into cash crop, you were exposed to the vagaries of the market. So when the markets went down, there was insufficient cash. In fact, there were losses. All these accumulated have led to, so your suggestions can be diverse. Suggestions can be very, very diverse than the suggestions that we are looking at. For example, new legislation. Necessarily, that might not be the suggestion. How about how about first, of course, primarily having more, decision makers in the legislation. For example, the reservation bill 33%. What is stopping that? That might bring a lot of change in the experience of lawmaking, in the experience of law enforcing when it comes to women migrants. So very, 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 very important theme of the conference, because according to me, it is feminization of migration and feminization of poverty has to be addressed. Second, it is not to be seen as something that, we are sitting in AC chambers and talking about the less privileged. No, it is about a universal phenomena. With the kind of disruptions that we are having, many of us are already in the stage of being upper mobile migrants, but migrants are all the same because vulnerabilities exist. That is second. Third is, of course, strong training in interdisciplinarity, so that we create this knowledge that happens between the concrete slabs, on that patch of patch of soil where the grass grows. That would be new way of thinking, and and for the young people, this is your responsibility. It is not just about writing a paper and appearing in a conference and getting a certificate. It is your responsibility, because economic crisis is something that we'll have to be accustomed to, and it is the onus of course, us definitely, and the younger generation to understand this crossroads that we are at, and be active players in that. Therefore, your research needs to have that passion, has to have that kind of seriousness. All right, and of course, it has been very nice co-hosting the session with Mahendra sir, and I've had a very nice person hosting, Arunima, I think, na? Hosting the.
My name is Mrinmoyi Mukherjee.
Mrinmoyi. So yeah, very nice, very nicely conducted session, and all presenters, Ankit, Anushri, Asim, Dhananjay, Bharti, Ashish. I hope you will take inputs from what Mahendra said has very correctly told you, and about the larger purpose of research and the magnitude and responsibility that is on all of you, with the possibility of making the future better. So on those words, if I'm permitted, I will conclude. And thank everybody once again.
I thank you, the chair, and it's our privilege and honor to be part of this particular session in your guidance, ma'am. And the insights that you have shared, obviously, I think that everyone who have present here, as well as even all the faculty members, should also look at, and that is the next big dimension that I can say. So thank you all for your insights and valuable inputs and suggestions. Thank you, ma'am.
I think I did not thank Shanti Samanda madam. So madam, I recognize your
No
contribution.
problem, doctor. Thank you so much. It was very...
No, feminization or migration, to bring that into focus is very, very important. Can I request Mahendra sir to please also, talk to us and to the participants? They would also benefit from the same.
Yes, ma'am, definitely. I think that if participants, if they want to say anything, I think they can also allow them. We have 5 more minutes to go. Can we do that, Mrinmoyi ma'am? They have to share anything.
Yeah, if the participants want to share anything, they may do so.
Fine then. It is like that is not turn out for the same. But anyway, I have to thank Shanti Samanta madam for making this particular conference a successful one, as well as to do it, and that in the period of pandemic again. And that is something that we have to give credit to. And thank you, Shanti ma'am, for providing this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Nagar, for chairing the session, and it was indeed really helpful. The comments and the questions that you had posed to the students and the participants who have presented their papers. And I am sure they have benefited by participating and the inputs that you have given them. So thank you all very much. And with that, we will conclude this session. And I hope all of you can join us for the valedictory session, which should be starting at 4:30. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mrinmoyi.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrinmoyi ma'am.